Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. New regulations for ability to benefit are pending. What do they mean for adult career pathways? Our sponsor today is Burlington English, and with us we have Amelia Bogus, who's going to share a few words with us. I'll stop sharing my screen. Amelia?
Thanks so much, James. And thanks everyone for having us here today and allowing Burlington to sponsor this wonderful educational webinar. As James said, my name is Amelia Bogus and I am with Burlington English. And today I want to share a little bit about our curriculum and what benefits it might offer. Okay, so we all know that guiding students through their next steps for further education and careers is what we are here for. Know that Burlington English will help you and your teachers do this with your students from day one. Whether teachers have extensive career guidance experience or are just taking their first steps assisting students, Burlington is there every step of the way explaining the process. Burlington helps students explore all 16 Department of Labor career clusters, helping them determine what they want to study. Students can explore individual pathways as they learn more about specific careers of interest, such as job duties, skills and abilities needed, and educational and training requirements, all designed to assist teachers in preparing students to find and succeed on the path for their personal goals. Burlington helps students set goals, and we all know goals help us drive all of our persistence. Have your local BE representation show you our fantastic student career pathway portfolio. Here you can see some of the great planning tools they have. Speaking of your local representative, that brings up one of the very best things about Burlington English, and that is the people here to support you. Reach out today at burlingtonenglish.com and enjoy the webinar. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Amelia, and thank you for your sponsorship and everything that you do for adult education. It is your partnership is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, so on to our presenters today. We have a full panel. We have Ivana Hanson from North Carolina ICANN Project. We have Judy Mortrude from World Education, Michelle Lamons from the Texas Success Center and Amarillo Colleges, Kristina Flores, Texas Success Center in the Texas Association of Community Colleges, Shirley Doan with World Education, and Laurencia Walker with Career Ladders Project. You can say hello to them in the chat box, and I think they want you to submit their questions in the chat box today as well. So with that, I will hand it over to them, and I thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you, and thank you so much to COE for giving us this time, space, and support to talk about this critical but often misunderstood and underutilized strategy. I'm going to just click into the slideshow here. So we have 3 goals on today's agenda and not a lot of time to cover all of them. But first, for those of you who are new to ability to benefit or who would like a refresher on what it means, we're going to talk a little bit about what it is, how it's used, and why it should be used. And then we'll move into talking about how 3 states are currently using ATB as a strategy to promote adult dual enrollment. Lastly, we'll talk about some of the pending ATB rule changes that are happening, and we'll invite you to join a national effort to share the new rules through the public comment period that will be happening. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat and we'll get to them as we see them or at the end, depending on what the question is. Judy, take it away.
Shirley. Hi, everybody. So kind of a fire hose of information coming at you, but know that we will have all these resources available for you to come back to. We're going to start with just a little review because ATB policy and regulation has had a bit of a rough road over the years. Some of you might be thinking that ability to benefit is just for students who hit a cut score on a test, or you might be thinking that ATB was eliminated by Congress a while ago and doesn't exist, or that ATB has a reduced disbursement amount, less money for federal student aid through ATB. And really all of those things were true at one time, but Those are not true now. Ability to benefit is simply the mechanism by which adult learners who are duly enrolled between adult education in order to receive their high school diploma or equivalency and post-secondary education, working toward that recognized post-secondary credential, can access federal student aid, Pell Grants, and any federal student aid. So we've had this provision since 1991. Students could use the ATB alternative. There was a test option, which honestly was really looking for unicorns, high achieving high school dropouts who could hit that cut score. Then the state defined process came into effect and was added, but it was not utilized for a full 30 years. And then we had the credit hour option, which was added when much of the adult career pathway integrated education and training initiatives were flourishing and really proving that people who couldn't hit that test cut score could still be successful college students. In 2012, it's true that Congress did eliminate ATB as an option for new students. It was then partially restored with that alternative disbursement schedule, aka less money, and added this unique career pathway requirement. And then in 2016, Congress passed the ATB law that we're using now, revising the definition of the eligible career pathway program to align it and be exactly the same definition as in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, and including adult education, of course, and got rid of that lower Pell rate, which means that ATB students since 2016 are on the same Pell grant disbursement schedule, receive the same level of Pell funding as any other student, and of course, access to any other type of federal student aid. In 2019, we had Perkins reauthorized the Perkins CTE legislation, again, using the same career pathway definition as we now have in WIOA and in the Higher Education Act, meaning that all three big federal laws supporting adults in education share the same career pathway program model. Also in 2019, the U.S. Department of Education, OCTAE, began a dialogue with the field about promoting ability to benefit, and the next year, 2 states became the first states approved with a state-defined option, state-defined process, and now we're up to 6 states. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And that attention to the state-defined alternative process led the U.S. Department of Education to open up the ability to benefit rule for negotiated rulemaking, which happened over the last couple of years. And so there are some changes ahead that we all really need to pay attention to, and we'll get to those later in our program. But first, the quick basics. So ATB is a path to eligibility for federal student aid for people without a high school diploma or equivalency. Since 2016, it requires that a person shows their ability to benefit from post-secondary education through one of these 3 alternatives, that test that we've talked about, through the state-defined process, or what's called the credit hour option, 6 credit hours or 225 block hours. So that's what the student must do. And then the education partners, us, we must provide an eligible career pathway program for that student to enroll into. So typically any student receiving federal student aid must meet these requirements. If you go down this list, you'll see that there are ands, until we get to the right side column where it turns into an or. You have to have your high school diploma or a recognized equivalent, or complete homeschool, or come in through ability to benefit, enroll in a career pathway program, and complete one of the ability to benefit alternatives. So this is just adding our adults without high school diplomas or equivalencies into the regular mix with any other student who can qualify for federal student aid. So let's look at the 3 alternatives that eligibilize the student. This is the list of tests. Again, you can, the U.S. Department of Education maintains this list of tests. It was updated in 2020. They will always put this up in the Federal Register, even when if they make more changes to the list. But of course, the thing about a test, right, is that it's a high stakes exam, not unlike the GED or the high set. And if students are good at tests, they could probably get through one of the high school equivalency tests and not need the ATB alternative for federal student aid. So the test option is not an option that is used very often in adult education. In fact, the negotiated rulemaking process led the Department of Ed to provide some analysis of current use of ATB. And this is just a fascinating look at who's using which option. And you can see that what we learned is that the for-profit post-secondary providers are far and away the users of the test option, right? 93% of folks who come in through the ATB provision in a for-profit situation use the test. But what do public institutions use? Look over there on the left, 98.6% of the folks who come into a public post-secondary institution using the ATB provision come in under the credit hour option. So here's the language about the credit hour alternative. Again, the early adult career pathway work of a couple decades ago really helped establish this 6 credit alternative. People become eligible for federal student aid by completing at least 6 credit hours or 225 clock hours that are applicable toward a Title IV eligible degree or certificate offered by the post-secondary institution. What that means is not remedial or developmental coursework in those 6 credits or 225 clock hours. The coursework must demonstrate that the student has the ability to benefit from post-secondary education program in which the student is enrolled or intends to enroll, but need not be applicable to that specific degree or program in which the student is enrolled. So lots of states put this strategy into effect, putting together abrading funding, using opportunity grants in states, using foundation funds, using American Rescue Plan funds during the pandemic, Title I funds, lots of different strategies being used to fund those first credit hours, thereby turning on the federal student aid. And again, the third option to eligibilize a person is for that person to come in under a state-defined process. So what this means the student doesn't have to hit a cut score on one of those tests, doesn't have to first pass 6 credit hours, but can immediately access federal student aid for their program under this state-defined option. This is really the option that can create an intentional adult dual enrollment strategy, because the state has to write up a plan and include the names of the institutions that are part of that plan and include the services that come with the eligible career pathway program. So there's a lot of interest in this area, rightly so. But it's also important to remember that any college participating in Higher Education Act Title IV federal student aid can use any of the alternatives, even if their state has a state-defined process. They can also use the test or the credit hour alternative, because it is a decision at the institutional level. And again, when we say state-defined process, it does not mean all post-secondary institutions in that state. It means the institutions listed in that state plan. Okay, and you can see the 6 states that have gone forward and they're leading the way for us. All right, so that's kind of the what and the how in a very, very quick nutshell. So this slide is really about the why. Why use an ATB strategy? And first, we like to say that ATB can help you meet your state and local post-secondary education attainment goals. All states have one, and adult education students are a right population to be included in those goals. And it can also help you meet the equity strategies embedded in those goals, and also bring equity to your adult education system, right? A system that predominantly serves community members who have been failed by systems, honestly, by an education system or a political system. And we want those adults, we want to serve those adults not with terminal training, but with evidence-based educational designs like integrated education and training in career pathways. You also have the opportunity to leverage that alignment in the federal legislation, the alignment of the career pathway definition across these federal funding streams. And you can really use that to strengthen your workforce development and career tech ed pipelines. And finally, you want to achieve sustainability for your career pathway efforts, right? Far and away, the greatest source of higher education funding is federal student aid. So if you can build these strategies, then you can continue to tap into that aid structure to support your work. And if you want to dig in more, that is a very fast ATB primer. But I want to point out that COABE did a great ATB symposium. Regina Suet, the former leader at Pima Community College and the incoming president of COABE, arranged this ATB symposium, and there are some really excellent videos all archived here. You can hear from faculty and financial aid directors and college leaders and really hear why they are pursuing ATB strategies in their states. And then we're going to hear from leaders in 3 states now after Shirley sets the stage.
Thanks, Judy. So what does ATB implementation actually look like in practice? So for the past year, World Education has been involved with this project called Advancing ATB for Equitable Access to Opportunity, often shortened to just Advancing ATB. And we advocate for ATB implementation as specifically a strategy to help achieve racial equity. So this work builds upon the Lumina Foundation funded work called the REACH Collaborative, which stands for Racial Equity for Adult Credentials into Higher Ed. And their goal is to focus on transforming credential pathways to associate degrees at community colleges in order to improve credential attainment and economic mobility for adult learners of color. And there's 6 states that are currently involved in the REACH Collaborative. So again, ATB implementation is one strategy that can be used to support these adult learners of color in increasing their chances of post-secondary enrollment, and then in turn, credential attainment and economic mobility. And so this project has been working with ATB implementation in 3 states, California, North Carolina, and Texas. And so you'll get to hear from each state about what they've been doing over this past year. So first we'll hear from California. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Laurencia from the Career Ladders Project.
Great. Thank you very much, Shirley. Hello, everyone. My name is Laurencia Walker, and again, I work for the Career Ladders Project. Just a brief primer on CLP. We're an organization affiliated with the California Community College System, and we work with colleges and their partners to really look at how they can become more equitable in their redesign of their institutions and partnerships. And so to that end, we're really excited about the work that we are supporting with a consortia in Southern California that is bringing colleges together, community-based organizations, as well as intermediaries such as CLP, to really look at how we can accelerate transitions for our adult learners. That work centers around the 3 areas that you see here on the slide. Collaborating with regional partners to expand dual enrollment in adult education. In California, there is a Senate Bill 554 that allows for adult students to participate in dual enrollment. And so it provides some context for us in our local colleges to execute that, as well as connect it to ability to benefit. And so with that, looking at how we can support the development and implementation of ability to benefit as it relates to adult dual enrollment. And then finally, promoting the award of credit for industry credentials by way of credit for prior learning. And so we're really excited about these colleges and their partnerships, really looking how they can become more equitable in terms of serving more students, and in particular, the adult learners in their service areas. On the next slide, and related to this work, we're really equally excited to share that we have an updated user's guide for ATB and adult dual enrollment, in which Judy was a very great partner and advisor in the development of this. We'll be able to share a link to that in the chat, as well as a link to our website where you can access it as well. And this user's guide provides some context in terms of policy in the California context, and some checklists and guiding principles and questions for practitioners to apply when they are looking to implement and integrate these opportunities for their adult learners. So we're really excited about this publication and find it to be a great tool, and folks are already using it. So that's really great to hear. On the next slide, we also wanted to share that since California is a relatively large community college system, so there's folks up and down the state that are trying to do this in their local context, but would benefit from communication from one another. So we have an online free virtual community of practice where practitioners throughout the state can pose questions, upload documents, look at different reference tools. We have that for, it was pretty successful for students in dual enrollment in the K-12 side. So we decided to replicate that for adult dual enrollment. So that community is growing, and we're really excited about that, and seeing how folks can uplift promising practices, ask questions, and learn from folks that are actually doing the work day to day to improve their institutions and their communities. And then finally, if in fact you want to learn more about what folks are doing, we are definitely going to be uplifting these promising practices through various, through the base camp, through webinars and various conferences. And so we will have all that information updated on our CLP website, in which you can have access to. We'll drop that link in the chat as well. Again, thank you, Judy and Shirley, for inviting us to be here. That's a little glimpse into what California is doing, by no means the full scale, but hopefully that whets your appetite to learn a little bit more about what California is doing. And thank you.
Thank you. And again, if anyone has questions for each of the state partners that are presenting, please put them in the chat and we can get to them as soon as possible. So next we have Texas. So Kristina and Michelle will be speaking about what's happening in their state.
Thank you so much, Shirley, and happy Friday, everybody. I'm Kristina Flores. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation at the Texas Success Center. We live inside the Texas Association of Community Colleges. So unlike California, we do not have a system for our community colleges. Rather, all 50 of our districts choose to be members of our association. And in the Texas Success Center, we manage the guided pathways strategy called Texas Pathways. And so we had been working with Michelle Lamons and Dr. Tamara Clunas from Amarillo College for several years to integrate adult ed into guided pathways at our community colleges. And we were especially excited to partner with World Education to really take some work that Michelle had been doing for us on ability to benefit and bring it to scale to reach all of our colleges. So I'm excited to introduce Michelle Lamons. I'm going to turn it over to her so that she can tell you a little bit more about how we are scaling efforts to bring awareness to ability to benefit in our Texas community colleges.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. So yes, as I have been working with the Texas Success Center, my initial research was really guided around integration of adult education. Prior to starting with the Texas Success Center, I was a part of a Texas Workforce grant that it was about 2 different iterations. And during that time, there were 17 community colleges that I had worked with. And of those 17 community colleges, we started to see a correlation between adult education integration and people utilizing ability to benefit at scale at their community colleges. And so when I transitioned to start doing research for the Texas Success Center, I had already had some suspicions that ability to benefit was being underutilized. And soon after, as I started to research, it was very clear as my research moved forward, I found an artifact that was over the ability to benefit usage analysis. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So during this time, we saw significantly, there was a huge decline for the use of ability to benefit between 2016 and 2021. And also what was quite startling was that Texas was grossly underutilizing ability to benefit. And so, like I said earlier, as I've been doing research in different areas, we we can't prove it yet, but we do think that there may be a correlation to people who have community college, who have adult education programs at their community colleges, that they may not be actually integrating adult education into their systems. So therefore that people can more seamlessly utilize ability to benefit. So I'm going to move to the next slide just to talk a little bit about integration of adult education in your community college systems. I won't stay long on this, but this is one of the things that we really highly recommend to practitioners who want to utilize or implement ability to benefit at their institutions, utilizing their adult education population. We firmly believe that if you're going to push this initiative and you're going to utilize your adult ed population to gain access to ATB, that you will need to focus on integrating adult ed. And when we talk about integration of adult ed, I'm saying deeply weaving in adult education into your strategic plan, utilizing adult ed to not only foster enrollments for your institution, but that your institution is strategizing around your students who are adult ed students to have them have a readiness for college. And I'm going to move to the next slide. One of the things that we did develop as we have been doing our research is a Ability to Benefit Texas resource guide. And we have 7 different efforts. One of our number one effort, our first effort, is integration of adult education into your community college systems. This is when we talk about integration, we're saying that your adult education students are treated like an undergraduate student or a continuing education student, that they have the same access to, let's say, your tutoring centers. For us, we have a center called the ARC. We're nationally recognized for our Advocacy and Resource Center. Our students who are adult ed students are able to access, let's say, funding for housing, food. Students who are housing insecurity, they can do that. Students who have food insecurities, they can utilize our systems here at Amarillo College, and they're not actually an undergraduate student or a CE student. They are a student. This is what our president likes to say: students are students. When they enroll into Amarillo College, students are students. So they have IDs, and so we're weaving in our students' experiences at Amarillo College and readying them to become an academic student. And so we think that that has a lot to do with us being able to change mindset of our students. And then as we're changing those mindsets of our students, that as our students enroll into Amarillo College, that they're not behind. They already know how to utilize Blackboard. They already know how to utilize our tutoring centers. They already know all of the systems that we have in place at Amarillo College. They're just transferring those same things that they would be, those same things that they would be doing from a high school equivalent student or an emergent bilingual student, an ESL student, moving those, if you will, oh gosh, I've lost my words, but they'd be able to use those same skills that that they were using prior to as an adult ed student into the actual college systems as an academic student. So then we focus on effort number 2. One of our huge pieces is being strategic. If we're going to do the implementation of ability benefit, there is a huge partnership that is connected to that. And so we usually tell people that they need to use the career pathways 7 components from the WIOA definition. If you're going to partner around developing an ability benefit model, this would be the strategy to use. We have our effort 3, utilizing something that's already there. There's a career pathways toolkit, but you can also work with your current financial aid director who is submitting these programs to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board as well. So they're like, don't reinvent the wheel, already use something that's already there with your community college as an adult education practitioner. Then our 4th one is figuring out what alternative is best for you. Judy went over those. So which one is the best fit for your actual institution? And then Effort 5, identifying your students. Every student's not quite ready yet for college. We've even seen in some of our data that students who started with our program, they made it, they came back 6 months to a year later. But because we have such an embedded college integration with them, they already know how to do college. So this is not something new for them. That's why we really emphasize the integration into your community college. Effort 6, providing supports, and we're providing supports in multiple ways. Again, our students are students at Amarillo College, so they already have access to all of the systems that help students be successful at our institution. And then of course, effort 7, you're going to have to figure out a way to fund it. And so utilizing adult education, those Title II funds, you can, we highly encourage people to develop an IBEST practice so that we can help. We utilize the 6 semester credit hour here at Amarillo College. So there is some funding that has to be associated with that. We utilize our Title II funds from adult ed. We pay our IBEST instructors through adult education. And then of course, there are other things that will need to be in place as far as funding, but those are the 2 main things that we utilize as far as we talk when we speak to funding our program. So these are just some of the things on the practitioner side that we're doing here at Amarillo College and utilize. We're placing this Texas resource guide for people to go in and use it. It has, again, 7 efforts, and you can toggle in between it. It gives you suggestions that you can use as you're filling it out. It is something that we would encourage partners to use to utilize together as they're creating their ability benefit model. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And last but not least, we'll hear from Ivana about what's happening in North Carolina.
Hey everybody, I'm Ivana Hanson and I work at the System Office in North Carolina Community Colleges. I am the Adult Learner Specialist / REACH Project Coordinator. So we are a little bit farther behind than our friends in Texas and California on this work, but that's okay because it's motivated us to really get started with it. So, and you can go next slide. So why did we want to connect this work? Really some good surveys and information came out that's kind of guiding us through this whole process. 2 in 3 adults considered enrolling in education prefer non-degree pathways. 78% of those with a non-degree credential said it was worth the cost, and fewer than 1 in 3 adults without degrees say they understand available career pathways, skills. So one of the things we're doing as we're building these career pathways and these very specific career pathways through the REACH project, we're really focused on our adult learner population. So next slide. Judy. So one of the things with our REACH project that may be different than some of the other states, and we asked every single one of our institutions, we have 23 institutions participating in the project, and we asked if they all wanted to add this additional piece where they focused on our adult basic skills students, college and career readiness. We have lots of names for them. And every single one of our schools said yes, they want to make that part of their REACH project and part of their planning. I would say that we are not 100% successful at that, so to be frank and honest, but I think the conversations are starting and guiding us in this work more so than they have in the past. And part of the reason that we really wanted to focus on this group, and the REACH project in particular, is focused on adults of color, Black, Hispanic, and Native American. And we know that in our programs here in the state, 70% of our students are students of color. However, only less than 2% of them are transitioning at this point into a post-secondary program. So we really wanted to add this piece and ensure that there was an on-ramp in our pathways specifically for our adult ed students. And in the past, we've had, and we still have on the books, but we have a program that we call Basic Skills Plus that is a tuition remission program. It's basically a dual enrollment program for adult ed students. However, our Basic Skills Plus program is going to be like your test-based program. So at that point, students have to be at the ASE level in order to qualify for this program. So after the TABE test changed in 2018, which most of us use for our enrollment test, and it got much more difficult, basically our Basic Skills Plus program has completely dropped off. I think the last time I looked, we've only had maybe 10 students take advantage of it this year, this academic year. So that's the other reason that we really wanted to add this ATB piece in, so that we can actually find a good work and get these students leveraged and onto those career pathways before they have to finish their high school equivalency and then take the step. Next slide. So what we're doing in order to try and do some of this work is we're writing up an implementation guide for schools. So right now that is going to be focused on the two available, what we have available right now, right? Which would be the test-based way and then the 6 credit hour. So those are available to our schools at this point already. So getting some information out to our schools about how to use it. How does that impact financial aid? What kind of things do they need to have to hold on to? That kind of stuff. So we're working on that. That's kind of an ongoing process. We've got some people from the state level and then some people from some of our schools that are working together, and we get together every other week and kind of work through this. We need to figure out the technical requirements. And I say that this is really important because we are in the process of changing at least, 3 student management data management systems. So our adult basic ed is moving to a new system. Our continuing ed is moving to a new system. And then curriculum will be also moving to a new system. So part of the reason that I say we're behind, but is intentional, that we're intentionally slow rolling this because we don't exactly know what it's going to look like in our computer systems and in our data systems. So we really need to make sure that that is in place and figured out before we want to give this to schools and then cause problems because nobody knows how to work it. So after we figure out those technical requirements, we're going to train the schools and do some training in the 2 available methods that we have so far. Really building the why with our program staff, administrators, and students. We're not there yet. We're still at a place where our adult basic skills and that department is really a very separate department, even though in North Carolina, it's located on community college campuses. We haven't done the best job in bridging the divide between the 3 curriculum areas, so curriculum, continuing ed, and basic skills. So that's part of the work we're really focusing on with this REACH project. But we also need to really, sell it to our presidents and our financial aid people, and because it's a different shift in thinking, right? Then the next step will be to develop, submit, and pilot a state-defined plan. So we want to really come up with something. What's under consideration, we're talking a lot about doing some kind of college enrollment type class, like an ACA class that's specifically written for these students that will have more of the digital literacy in it, things like that. So that's kind of what we're thinking about right now, but we're not there yet. And then once we've got that and once it's approved, hopefully it will be approved, then we will use that implementation guide to go back and update that implementation guide to add that state-defined plan and do some more training after that. So that's kind of what we're working on. Like I said, I'm not trying to rush this super fast especially because of the computer systems, and as complicated as those new adoptions are going, I don't necessarily want to throw a whole bunch more stuff that they have to figure out in the computer until they're comfortable with how we're just generally enrolling and using those data systems right now. That's North Carolina, and I think that's my last slide.
Thanks so
Wonderful.
much. Okay, go ahead, Judy.
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you to all of our states. Really great to see that work happening, and so interesting to see the different ways you are all going about it. Okay, so I'm back with the second half of the ATB requirement. We talk a lot about what the student has to do to access federal aid through ATB, but let's focus now on what we do as the educators and in putting together eligible career pathway programs. So I hope you're all really familiar with this definition, even if, unlike me, you don't have it laminated and posted above your desk. So I'm going to go really quickly through it. This is the exact same definition in the Higher Education Act for ATB as in WIOA, as in Perkins. And it starts out by saying a combination of rigorous high quality education, training, and other services. So that tells you everything right there. It is a combination. One person does not do this alone. Part A just says that this program results in skills with regional labor market value. There are jobs for people with these skills. B talks about, I like to think of this one as not short-term training. It is education and training, preparing people for further education and training through a variety of options. C, it has education and career counseling. And it continues in D and E. D and E is really the design and delivery of a career pathway. And if you flip to the next slide, the good thing for us is that D is the same definition as integrated education and training, something that in the adult ed world, we are all working hard to stand up, right? Education concurrently with and in the same context as workforce preparation and workforce training. E talks about organizing for acceleration. I think of that as not sequential, but contextual. I'll interrupt the definition with the next slide just to show you why we're spending so much time on IET in the adult ed world. And that's because IET is the one place where we really have some gold standard research documenting these positive impacts with over 45,000 students in 9 states, showing positive impacts on credential attainment, license completion, positive impacts on employment. So we know IET works, and that's another really good argument to be standing up your eligible career pathway programs. The definition finishes by just saying that a person is able to get their secondary diploma and at least one recognized post-secondary credential. So that's already in the definition. I think a lot of people don't think about that in the career pathway definition, but it's always talked about this idea of dually and simultaneously seeking secondary and post-secondary education, just as we do with dual enrollment for high school students all across the country. And G, I like to think about that one as not just for the first job, but to enter and advance in a career. So institutions, this is how this language comes from the Department of Ed, and it's still the language, the law of the land, saying that institutions decide the formality or informality of their approval process to designate a program as a career pathway program. The department was very clear from 2016 on that there was not a federal role in approving the career pathway programs, despite it being federal aid that the program is awarding and leveraging through ATB. And the department had created this checklist for programs to use to perhaps document their program's eligibility. So the last part of our message today is that this is soon going to be old news, because the negotiated rulemaking that took place last year has introduced some more language around eligible career pathway programs. So the next slide, you're going to see that language just as it exists in a draft rule. This rule has not been posted for public comment yet. That will be the next step. But this draft rule does not erase the other definition. The other definition stands. That other definition is in the law. This is simply additional process that is being proposed. And so in this proposal, you can see starting up there at A that the institution has to demonstrate to the secretary. So that means the college has to demonstrate to the U.S. Department of Education that a student is enrolled in an eligible career pathway program. No longer just saying it's the institution's responsibility. And so what does that mean to prove that someone is in an eligible career pathway program? Well, the proposed language, you can see in part 1, said that the student is enrolled in 3 things simultaneously. Little number 1 there is the post-secondary education program, the one that you receive the federal student aid for. Part 2 is adult education. And in the proposed language, it very explicitly says, and when we say adult education, we mean adult education like in WIOA, that is helping people get their secondary school diploma and transitioning to post-secondary. And then part 3 under number 1, workforce prep. So again, if you're in adult ed and you're looking at, workforce training, adult education and workforce prep, that sounds a lot like IET. And that I think is what they are mirroring that language on. Part 2 asks for some documentation that the eligible career pathway program is being developed to meet labor market needs and employers are engaged in some way, which I think is not a heavy lift for most post-secondary institutions that have advisory committees already. And as we continue, number 3 just says that the program you're creating meets the skill needs you identified. So that's sort of more redundancy. Point 4 says that you have to have academic and career counseling and you have to tell me who's doing it. Identify the individuals providing the career counseling services. 5 talks about that this education, this appropriate education that's offered concurrently and in the same context as workforce prep and training, again, IET language, is documented through an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, or some other evidence of alignment of post-secondary and adult education providers. And I think that's huge. The only state that I know that's currently doing that, I think, is Minnesota. And I think, Justin, you're here on the webinar, putting together a template that would help their institutions, their college and adult education partners have a formal memorandum of understanding documenting that partnership. And I really think this is a strong lever to ensure that students coming into post-secondary through ATB are truly getting high school equivalency, foundational skill building. They're getting that level of support. They are not simply being put into training. Okay, and it finishes up. Part 6 is even more there, some kind of proof that the person will receive a valid high school diploma or its recognized equivalent as part of this program. And then part B of this definition. So as I said at the beginning, they opened up this rule ostensibly because of the state-defined process being, the language around state-defined process being 30 some years old, states now writing state-defined processes and having very old language that didn't include the old career pathway definition or other things. So they opened up the rule because of the state-defined option, but you can see in part B just says, if you're not using the state-defined option, the secretary wants to use this same process for verifying the eligibility of the eligible career pathway program. So even if you're using the test option or the credit hour option, they're still proposing this same process for documenting and perhaps approving the eligible career pathway program between the post-secondary institution and the U.S. Department of Education. So that's again, not the law of the land yet. It is in a draft rule. You can see the link there. You can read more about that process if you are interested and see more of the language that's been proposed. There's a very nice red line document that you can kind of see the old versus the new, if you like that kind of stuff. On the next slide, I'll just point out that the eligible career pathway program language is not the only thing that will be in the draft proposed rule update. There is a lot of language around the state-defined option. We won't really know. We can see a draft. We can see a consensus draft at this link and on at the site that was on the previous slide. But we won't really know what they propose until they post it in the Federal Register. But we do know that when it is posted in the Federal Register, public comment is a strong force. And we are actively engaging with partners now to review the proposed rule, even as it exists before it's posted, because we feel fairly comfortable it will go up in this form. to have discussions about what's good about it, what's bad about it, how will that proposed rule support your adult career pathway work, how might it obstruct it? And really, we will work to draft comments, template comments that other people can use, and support people in any way we can to make sure you get your voices heard, to share your thoughts and your experiences when this rule comes up. So to that end, we have a website where we have put so many resources. We have copies of those 6 state defined plans that have those states have generously shared with us. So if you're thinking about writing a state defined plan, you want to see what they look like, you can see that. We have links to Texas Success Center's excellent professional development and career ladder projects, ATB board game and their ATB toolkit, other toolkits, other documents that all of that proposed rulemaking. So you can get it here at this QR code. You could also on the next page, I think we have it in a regular old URL. And I would just, again, really encourage people who are interested in this upcoming comment period. We don't know exactly when it will happen, but we expect that it will be posted in the Federal Register sometime this year, and be open for comment for some months. And so we will certainly be working with COABE and partners across adult and post-secondary education to support you all, making sure your voices are raised up. So I think that's the end of our, yes, it is. Great, well done, crew. We came in under the hour. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody, for the work you do and your attention to this topic. I know COABE, you will be following up with resources posting, I believe, on, is that right, James? Does this go up on a website?
Yes, so a replay along with the materials get posted on coabe.org within about 24 hours of the completion of the presentation today.
Great. And I am saving the chat right now so that we can follow up with all the folks who want who share their email addresses and want to get signed up for the various resources that we mentioned. And
I can share that chat file with you as well, Judy.
excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy
Okay,
your
thank you,
weekend.
everybody. Thank you, Burlington, for sponsoring this webinar. Thank you to all of our presenters. That was a lot of information, so good. Glad to be a part of it in the background here. So I want to wish everybody, hope they have a great weekend, great rest of your workday, and hopefully we'll see everybody or most of you in next week at COABE 2023.
There you go.
All right, if you could take a minute before you log off just to answer our 1-question poll, that would be great. And with that, I'll sign off. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.